Yep, there's the got it button. Yes, we got it.
Welcome everybody today to Go Figure podcast. And today we have an amazing uh, podcast guest on. His name is Andrew Locke. Now in Australia, Andrew is very, very well known. He has become quite the social media sensation amongst the bodybuilding and strength communities. He is a world record holder in the Masters bench.
Yep.
He's got several records across. I can't even list how many leagues. I think it was about 4 different leagues that you hold records in.
About right. Yeah, 4 federations. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's a physiotherapist, and we thought he would be an amazing guest to get on today to talk to us about all things bodybuilding and how, you know, working on your body can actually help you on and off the stage. So rehabbing it, different techniques that we'll get into. He's also an Ifbb judge, and he was just telling us a very interesting fact that he has actually he's judged every Australian pro show since around 89. He even was looking after Corey Everson when she came out to Australia many years ago. So I am in awe, actually. And welcome today, Andrew.
Welcome, Andrew.
It's so good to be here. We're all connected by the same passions, aren't we? The things that drive us on.
Sure are.
Absolutely. So tell us a bit about you, Andrew. How did you first, I guess, get into the sport? What led you into the world of strength, bodybuilding, physiotherapy?
It's a strange one, really, because I played baseball for Australia as a junior and I was going to become a professional baseball player. So when I finished about year 11 before the end of high school, I decided that was it. I was going to take off and play baseball professionally. So I took a year off, semi-professional, went and played interstate, thought about heading to America, and then suddenly saw a magazine with Arnold Schwarzenegger in it. And that was the end of my baseball career and beginning my body image disorder, which I currently and happily embrace for all my life. And that's really what it is. The weight training, the constant need to improve. It's been a really good one. So that took me into university. And when I went to university, it was very interesting that sports medicine, when I was graduating, the doctors and sports medicine people thought sports medicine meant you played a bit of football, maybe you played some netball, maybe you played some hockey, probably went swimming, maybe you rode a bike. No one had a clue about weight training. So I was very fortunate that when I graduated, I was on the cutting edge of, hey, I lift weights, plus now I've got a bit of a skill set and understanding how the injuries come together. So that's been me at I suppose, the forefront for a long time, is realizing that I was putting together the rehabilitation for weight training athletes when that wasn't even really recognized in our country. And it's been ongoing ever since. And of course, the never-ending quest to lift weights and get bigger. For me, it's the body image disorder of, trying to get bigger every day. So
we both share that with you.
Well, I think we're all there and everyone else in the bodybuilding community too.
One of the things that really got me, though, and I think it's interesting, is I was always inspired by the big guys. But you know what? The last 10 years, I'm more inspired by the female athletes who are weight trainers. My best improvement now would be probably inspired by looking at the best females in the world and going, they train so much harder than me. I'm pathetic. What am I doing? In fact, realistically, really interestingly, is when someone asked me who were my idols a few years ago, who's the inspiration, I actually mentioned a lady called Glenda Prosciutti. Now, Glenda was a vegan powerlifter who took up powerlifting in her 50s, and I never saw a person put on more muscle. And yet there was a person who did everything her coach ever said, every rep, every set, trained perfectly, followed all the plans. I never saw a person put on more muscle. Yet there she was, natural, vegan, always tested. And that was my inspiration, was saying, if Glenda's putting on that much muscle, why aren't I? And I thought, that's because she trains harder than I am. She wants it more. She does what she's supposed to be told. So my inspiration usually comes from seeing the best females grow, because I look at that and go, yeah, and I've got all the advantages and I'm not doing it anywhere near as good as they are. So, that's my inspiration.
That's an amazing point. I'm seeing more and more women who are in their 40s, 50s,
Mm.
even 60s. You know, there was a woman on stage recently who was 70 years of age, and she looked absolutely phenomenal. So I think you're right that, you know, you were obviously onto it early, that women are capable of a lot.
They train harder, and I'd always heard that back. There was a great trainer back in the we started in the 1940s anyway, but by the time we hit the 80s, his observation was fairly clear that he preferred training women because they actually trained harder than the men and did what he asked.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yep. So that's a real key element there, is they train harder and they're compliant, you
Yeah.
know. So and you said, you know, within training harder, you're also looking at other factors. Like, do you just mean that they're lifting more weights, or you mean that they're actually putting time into their recovery, their food, their all the, you know, I mean, if we're looking at it holistically here.
Holistically would be the word. That's what it is. I think the female athletes I see do encompass those parameters so much better. But there's another part to that too. If you want to be successful, get ready to be out of balance in life. If you want to be balanced in life, you'll be not very good at lots of things. You'll be a little bit good at this, a little bit good at that. You'll be in balance. To be an exceptional athlete, you're going to be an exceptional athlete. But other things are going to suffer. Your work's going to suffer. Your relationships are going to suffer. All the other aspects of your life are going to be out of balance for you to enable yourself to be successful. So you may balance out the important things as far as your goals go, but get ready for everything else to suffer and take that stress off yourself. You're not supposed to balance everything if you want to be successful. You're going to sacrifice things that are going to be well and truly out of balance. But if you're doing your nutrition right, you're training right, you're eating right, you're sleeping right, you're putting everything into the goal, then that's the balance of the goal. That's the importance.
That's such an important key point there. In order to be successful, get prepared to get out of balance. And also that comes down to priorities as well, and values and what's important. So when you're out of balance, but you're aligned, you don't feel out of balance. You feel on path, don't you?
Oh, you are so happy, aren't you?
Yes, that's so, yes, yeah. And I think, you know, as you said, take the pressure off yourself. You don't have to have all of these things in balance. You know, it is, you know, you have to have that single-minded focus.
That's a real complex thing to be able to juggle when you've got your social life, you've got your partners, you've got various things in your life, you've got your other factors. Yeah, that's the challenge quite often. But if you're getting your goals and your dreams and you're seeing it in the mirror and you're moving better, that'll balance it. That'll make everything worthwhile.
So with your you currently have an amazing page. It is incredible. There's so much on your page that's provided free of charge. People can go there, they can look at exercises, they can see them done correctly. The form is you really break down the form that's needed, and you know, how to activate your glutes and how to increase your mobility. What would you say is the most important aspects around, I guess, training structure for
longevity is exactly what you say. The thing about it is when a younger athlete takes on weight training, they got so much more capacity to do things wrong and get away with it. But it's about capacity because your collagen changes as you get older as well. So poor technique that you could have used in a lift when you're young, that's not going to work when you get older, because you're not going to have the same capacity to absorb that dysfunction. And of course, that's one of the things we do say is all biological tissue has fatigue and load capacity. And especially lower back discs and things like that, well, especially a disc, it actually doesn't have a nerve supply except in the most outer part. So you can be realistically degenerating it quite spectacularly. You can be having quite some changes there. You won't feel a thing. And people say, maybe you're adapting. You're not adapting. You don't adapt to that. There's never been a study that indicates you ever adapt to it. So by the time you actually do get the injury, you're on the last millimeter or two. So you used your capacity up with poor form. Now that's the challenge that you've got to then learn to address. And unfortunately, with social media, there's no filter for idiots. So there's a lot of people out there who'll just keep telling you how to do things wrong. Longevity is about good technique.
Yeah, I've definitely seen some very interesting things on the internet lately. It's some very interesting training techniques.
Every day. And the biggest thing about social media algorithms is they reward sometimes they just reward that statement that's brutally black and white, dead wrong, out of context, and away you go. You just become a social media sensation.
You talked about capacity, Andrew, as through the years, through the decades, and alongside our collagen changing as we get older. How can through the ages, well, what are some things that we can do through the ages to manage or maybe identify the capacity, if that's even a thing, and also manage that longevity in terms of prevention as opposed to just treatment?
One of the things there which it really comes down to is excellence in exercise performance technique.
Right.
And I've been training a little bit with the Olympian Josh Lenardowitz lately.
Wow.
Wow, he's such a lovely guy. Have to say it. Nice guy of the industry, that one.
Training with him's been very interesting because I've always said about Josh, he doesn't know that you're not supposed to grow that fast. He just does it so well. And one of the things watching him when he trains, his eccentric, his concentric, his control of every repetition is outstanding. And I discussed that with him as when he went from being early stages to where he is now. And it's something that he's been fairly mindful of all the way through. He technically lifts very well, and that's what does give you the longevity. And there are people out there, they can throw weights around and they can grow, but you don't tend to see them last that long in their careers. There's a guy called Albert Beckles. Now, Albert Beckles, I think, won his last pro show when he was 62, Ifbb Pro.
Unbelievable.
I think there's a Niagara Falls Grand Prix. Now, I was fortunate enough to actually look after Albert Beckles back in 1989.
Wow.
Spent a bit of time with him there. Albert was all about beautiful form, technique, feeling each repetition. There's a guy who ended up competing all the way to 62 and looking incredible. If you look at him back in, I think it's 19, was it when Haney won the Olympia back in New York? Might be 94. It was just incredible. The Beckles came second, and you looked at that back, and man, he was one spot away from winning the Olympia, and he's at 56, I think he was then.
That's unbelievable.
Out of it. That's look, just jaw dropping, because Rose and I were having this conversation, towards the end of last year, going, what? We're heading into we're going to be 42, or at the end of our 7-year cycle. Are we really pushing that envelope? Are we the old ladies in the industry now? Should we kind of just hang up our heels and, just call it a day? And I don't know, maybe, just become one of those fitness fanatics. And this, we're hearing,
consistently,
isn't it? It's a theme that and we're seeing that all these girls that are competing, even the pro level girls in the Olympia, Andrew, like Boliana, Wendy Fortino, even Candace, we're all 40 plus. I'm thinking, they're only barely on their 30s. And I'm like, they just look young, they look healthy, they've looked after themselves. And then we see, ladies that are in their 60s competing in the Legions show, and Holy Mary, Mother and Joseph, they put their grandchildren to shame. Oh,
easily. Absolutely. They are the inspirations. And they're building great delts, and they're building glutes, and they're building all the things that you don't see on normal population people. It's a beautiful thing to see that you should be expecting to get better every year. If I look at some of the longest lasting athletes in, say, even powerlifting, the only reason they stopped was probably from arthritis and things like that. They didn't stop because that was the end of their age. It was just things caught up from other factors. You just keep going. There's a guy there the other day, Steve McMurray. Great to see. I mean, he's the first guy I've seen to bench press 200 kilos in Australia at the age of 62.
Oh, wow. Yes. It's just such a great message that, as you said, if you're smart about things, if you're working on that form, if you're working on the technique, you can have that longevity. You can can keep your body healthy, because it's all about bodily health, isn't it, really, at the end of the day. Your mental strength comes into it, of course, but your mental strength can't be there if your body's falling apart.
Well, that's the constant challenge we have. And if it starts falling apart, you've got to understand, why is it falling apart? What is it that you've been doing that is the problem? So it usually is simply that there is some things you aren't training that you should be training, that you got away without training for so long. But now the capacity is, you got some, shall we call them imbalances, you got some strengths that are so well established, and you got some weaknesses that are now entrenched. The body's pretty quick at picking up, if you can identify those weaknesses, to actually make you get out of pain fairly quickly.
And what process would you go through working with someone into not just the identification of that, which might come out symptomatically for individuals, but the process in which you would take them through, and how long that takes, and does it stop, or is it then ongoing? Might be too
Fortunately, human beings, we all have the same muscles, we all have the same bones, we all have the same joints. Essentially, there may be some different structures to them a little bit, but we know everything that's there. So the things that go wrong are very predictable. Oh, you've got tight hip flexors. Yeah, if they're tight, what's the problem? Yeah, the problem will be the opposite direction. Your tightness is stabilizing you. Your tightness is not a problem. Your tightness is actually your solution. So you've got these nice tight hip flexors that are holding you together, so you start stretching them. Well, they were actually doing a good job. What you missed was you have weakness elsewhere that caused those hip flexors to get tight. What's the opposite to hip flexor? Hip extender. All right, so it's more than likely that you have a weakness in hip extension. Welcome to your glute max. That's fairly much how it goes. You got pain at the front of the shoulder? Yep, well, that's because your strength's been at the front. You've been bench pressing all your life, but you haven't addressed your rhomboids between your shoulder blades. It's really 99% of the solutions are very easy for me to figure out, because humans, we're all the same. We go wrong in certain fashions. There's no muscle there that no one's ever seen before. We all know them. We know how they go together. We know how they action and function. So it's really not that hard. I always say that from a point of view where I saw somebody say recently, oh, we don't know much about lower back pain. And I thought, speak for yourself. I know a hell of a lot about it. I spent 30 years learning about it every day. Of course I know everything there is about it. But you don't, because you've been on social media for 2 years, but you think that enables you to say that we don't know. Speak for yourself. You don't know.
Yeah, you've actually had some amazing results. I've followed different people that you've actually have set through this rehabilitation process. Bodybuilders who have been on the edge of retirement, and you've brought them back.
Well, it's even, we talk about, bench press and say tearing a pectoral muscle. We often start that day with putting an empty bar back in your hands and seeing if you can move it. And if you can, then the rehab starts with you moving again that day.
Yeah.
So we don't rest. Very, very rarely would we ever rest. It's almost about, you've got to start moving and start moving well. So we always say it's about moving well is the most important part of your longevity.
Yeah, definitely. I think I hear it from a lot of women. I don't know about yourself, Lisa, with your clientele, but the minute someone kind of feels a bit of a soreness or ouchie, if they go to a doctor, that doctor will tell them, stop training.
So often, yes. I like it when the doctor says, don't squat. And you go, what sort of squat are you talking about? High bar, low bar, sumo? Tell me, doc, which squat may I not do? Front squat, goblet squat? The doc's going to look and go, I haven't got a clue what the hell you're talking about.
Yeah, or you've got clients that have had injuries. Let me rephrase that. That had an injury about 5 to 10 years ago, and it was a lateral medial meniscus tear or something like that. Now, I can't squat or do leg extensions because I had this tear 5 to 10 years ago, and that the doctor said I'll never be able to squat heavy again. I'll never. It's a common thing that
many women are told don't squat. I don't know how many girls I've spoken to at my local gym, even in the bodybuilding industry. Oh, don't deadlift and don't squat.
Wow, isn't that incredible? Because one of the things about us is we're actually hunter-gatherers, all of us here today. In evolution, about 350 to 400,000 years ago, our direct ancestors were Homo sapiens. You can go back 4.5 million years when you meet the first ancestor that actually stood upright. Fundamentally, they stood upright, they bent down, they picked things up, they squatted down and stood up. These are functional movements that a human being does. For some doctor to say, oh, you can't squat or deadlift, just shows that the doctor is very disconnected from human evolution and fundamentally how a human being moves. Of course, we should be able to squat and deadlift.
And, you know, and I'll add to that as well, because I'm a bit of a therapy junkie myself. You know, in some regimes of, you know, health, like exercise physiologists or osteos and myos, especially I'd say probably more so in the younger ones as well, the same concept is being driven as what their general practitioner would be saying, oh, you need to not move for the next, you know, XYZ time, just come in, we'll do some dry needling, we'll do some manipulation therapy, and you know, you should be right in about 8 weeks time. Do not squat, do not deadlift, do not bench press.
It's so amazing, isn't it? My recommendation to any athlete that has an injury is always seek out a practitioner who does your sport. As soon as you get somebody who understands your sport, they'll get you back doing your sport. Don't see a local doc if you've hurt yourself in weight training. You really want to go see a professional who does what you do, and they'll help direct you in the best and fastest way to returning what you do.
Yeah, that's so true. You probably don't realize this, but you were an instrumental part of me rehabbing my shoulder. So yeah, just following what you were, I had a bit of winging of my scapula.
Naturally, yes.
And so, yeah, I just watched all of your videos, and I also did a couple of Cam Arif, who you're a mentor to.
Super Cam, great.
Yeah. So good. He's wonderful. So I reached out to him because I knew he was looking to kind of work with a few people and, you know, try out things. And I said, well, look, this is my problem at the moment. And yeah, he took me through a lot of your techniques and we fixed it.
Absolutely. Yep. He'll be a great practitioner over the many decades ahead for him.
That's awesome.
And that's what we're getting. We're actually getting this now. We're developing professionals, enough professionals who do our sports, that you can always find somebody who does it somewhere, whether it's an osteo, a chiro, a myo, an ex-phys, doesn't matter. They're all going to be hopefully graduated enough to understand what you're doing in your sport.
I couldn't agree with you more, Andrew. I had a myo I was working with over the last 3 years, got to know my body really well, and one of the things with me was I've got so much muscle on a small frame, but I was terrible at doing what needed to be done in order to bring out, you know, my lats from the insertion to the attachments and extending my pecs and kind of like having that mobility to show my body off on stage. And the difference it made was incredible. And this is one thing that we really wanted to discuss with you about, because I know our listeners, male or female, that do hit the stage will get tremendous benefits of how to, what to do and how to increase that mobility for a bodybuilding sport in terms of, like, you know, flexion and extension and being able to bring out, you know,
being able to pose, you know, the way that we need to, and to be able to be on stage as long as we need to as well.
Well, that's one of the big things, isn't it? We call it stability must precede ability. So your body must feel stable for it to enable you to give you the positions you want to find. Now, if you do have a mobility issue, then you actually need to address it and not just train. Because that's the common thing. We love training, we love lifting, we love doing those things. But doing the mobility work, it sometimes is, oh, really, I've got to do that? Well, yeah, if you do have that deficit there, it's not going to change overnight. It's like having a flat tire on your car, parking it out the front of the house and expecting it to have changed in the morning if you didn't address it. Mobility, if that is a problem, has to be prioritized. So you prioritize your mobility in your training sessions until you've achieved your mobility that you require.
Yeah.
So if you look at it being presenting on stage, such an important part is Is there a mobility issue with your ability to find the positions that you have to display? If there is, you need to spend time then on achieving those positions. And that is where someone like Cam's very good with that. Even Vicky Arif, their Super Vicky, I think you'll catch up with her sometime.
Yes, amazing.
Good people who truly understand how to help you find the movements and positions. Probably if I look at some of the competitors who have come to me and asked me what they could do better, often it breaks down to that is that they haven't addressed those things that could show how good they are. And quite often I see a competitor will come on stage and they'll look like a rabbit in the headlights, and they'll run out on stage pretty quick. They will hide as fast as they can and hope that their physique got seen by somebody. You've got to have the confidence to take your time to be able to display each thing when you want to show it to the judges, and to take your time and to be back when you're ready. To rush through it, you're hiding something.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
if you're hiding something, don't worry, the judges will see it. There's no problem with that. But if you're coming out there and you know how you can find every position and you can display it there and you take your time and you're looking happy about that, that's going to make a huge impact to the judges, because that's what the confidence immediately says that to them. There was one really top pro bodybuilder who I didn't think very much of. Just physically, it was not an inspirational physique. And then I was judging a comp and he came out on stage and I thought immediately, now I know why you win. You just made everybody see your strengths, and all the weaknesses, nobody's seeing them, because you just come out and given them the most beautiful thing of, look at what I've got. And it was an unconscious thing. I think Frank Zane was another one who could do that.
I was just going to say, Frank Zane was the master of illusion, wasn't he? I mean, looking at him off the stage and, covered up in clothing, you sort of thought, well, he's not the hugest guy. He was never the biggest on stage often.
No.
But then he would come out and he was just, his posing was beautiful. He was able to get his body and maximize his positions to show, this is my strength, and hide the weaknesses.
All you ever saw were his strengths on stage. That's all you ever remember. Classic shots that he could do. And that's an ability to reach those positions to enable you to see them for the judges. Never heard a judge who said they didn't like his physique on stage. Everyone just thought he was pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah,
that's one of the biggest things.
Yeah, and I would agree with that as well. And there's a misconception, and I put my hand up and say that I used to be one of them. And it was like, I can't get my lats out enough, or my sweep in my legs aren't opening enough. And, I don't have enough muscle. So then what do? You go to the gym.
You go and train more.
You start pushing more weight, getting the protein in. And in most cases, probably 90% of cases or more, it's just your ability to not be able to like you said, stabilize and then immobilize your physique. And then the moment I was able to do that with, working with George, I was like, holy Mary, Mother of Joseph, I look like I'm got 10 kilos extra muscle on my body, because to look at me, every day, or even Rose, we just straight up and down look like greyhounds, have to turn 3 times. Shut up.
But then when you get that, when you get those shoulders out and you actually learn how to do that front pose correctly, and you have the flexibility through your upper thoracic spine to be able to do that, it completely transforms.
You've absolutely done it, haven't you? You've been able to find that position. You've taught yourself to be stable, and then you've got the mobility to demonstrate the beautiful X shape you're looking for, the shoulders to waist, and you're able to find positions that give us the illusion on stage that we're all looking for.
Yeah.
Because there's some very well-developed individuals out there, and they're balls of muscle, but they don't have the capacity intellectually to absorb the fact they got to work on the things they didn't enjoy doing. They like lifting weights.
Yeah. And posing is hard. Let's face it. It's tough. A posing session for me is way more difficult than a session in the gym. Maybe legs. If I'm doing a heavy leg session, okay, that's probably, on par. But it is very taxing, holding those positions, and you have to have posing fitness.
Wow, that's such an important thing you're giving people there. Posing fitness. Yeah, you got to have it. You got to be there till the last pose is called and looking as if you're enjoying it, even when you're suffering.
Oh, yes. And those hot lights are coming down on you and making you sweat.
Now, that's something that people who don't spend time doing that will suffer with.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. If you've got that posing fitness, you can handle the heat from the lights. You can handle standing in the position for a long time. And sometimes the judging, if it's close, you're up there for a long time. What would you say, even from your judging experience, what would be the most common things that you have seen on stage where you've thought, this is kind of a common issue?
Well, I think one of the things will also go back a little bit into that is finally female body figure sports and bodybuilding looks as if it's settled at last to the point where you can actually predict what the judges are going to look for each year. Oh, if you look at,
Hallelujah. Praise the Lord.
It's taken decades for that to happen. You could go and compete one year and next year the judge is looking for something different. And they're rewarding what they didn't reward the year before. Every year when we go to judging meetings, often it's just before the show. And then at that point, the federation's going to tell you what they're looking for. Competitors were in such a tough position over the last few decades, whereas I look at it now and I go, it's very well established. We know, you know what the judge is looking for now. The last 5 years especially, you got the wellness, you got your figure, you got your bikini, you got your body, everything's there, but you actually know what they're looking for now. It has really become at last something where you can look at one year and you know what you got to do the next year.
Yes,
And
definitely.
it's not going to change. It's beautiful.
So like you really see that at the Olympia level as well.
Yes.
Like especially with Sid, like now 6-time Olympian in figure as well. Like she's not the biggest, she's not the leanest, but she's the most well balanced, overall. And she, like you said, to look at her in everyday life, she's like this, straight up and down. And then the moment she gets on stage, her waist looks like this and it disappears, and her lats go out here, and her quad sweeps are just incredible. But she's got that overall package, and they've been consistent with that for the last, like you said, 6 years.
Yeah, I think that's about where it's really at last got to the point where you can really settle in and you know what you've got to do for the next year. And that has been, I think, one of the most wonderful things about now looking at where the judging is the athletes can come out and they know what they've got to work on. There are people who just love training and then they compete. You've got to love the whole thing. You've got to love the presentation. You've almost got to embrace your social media as well. There's a lot to that comes in for now figure competitions and physique competitions. Is that it's not just the lifting of the weights. I can remember some of the greats I've spent some time with, and they really didn't enjoy competing. They enjoyed training. Competing was sort of like, I suppose I've got to do it. It was sort of what you had to do, but they would rather be in the gym training than competing.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to be successful, you've got to start to enjoy what it's like to get on stage and what you got to do.
Yeah. And I think that, as you said, it comes with confidence. And if you have that, you know what your criteria is, which we do now, and then you are training in the gym, and then you have the posing confidence. It is great. It's great to get up there. It's the funnest thing on earth.
To have turned it from fear to fun is a real skill there, Rose.
Don't worry, I still have my fear on the day. Don't ask me if I like it on the day before I'm on stage. I'll probably tell you something different.
It was funny. There was
the opposite. I don't like the before part, but I love being on stage.
yeah, same.
Oh, it's a real head game for us all. I can remember there was one of the biggest guys of all time, and backstage, he was in one of the rooms, and he was crying to his wife, "I'm not big enough. I can't go out. I'm not big enough." And this is one of the biggest human beings we've ever seen. And it was you just realize this is a person who was having real anguish at just not thinking they were worthy of being there. And yet certainly they were. It's a tough sport in so many ways because, as you know, with the dieting that takes you to that edge, you're not going to be a rational thinker a lot of the time.
That's so true. That's so true. And, it is sad to see people that, on stage, like, when they are lacking that confidence, the whole crowd feels for them. It's sort of awkward for everyone, isn't it? It's sort of like, oh no.
Spectacularly. Yeah, so it's a very complete sport, isn't it? It's a mental game, it's an eating game, it's a training game. It's a very, very tough sport to engage in, but it's so satisfying because it does reach so many parts of your life, doesn't it? You learn so much from what we do.
It's a sport that you can't hide away from either, because everything is expressed, isn't it? Like the moment you get on stage.
Yeah, you can't hide anything,
No,
but you can display your good points very well.
that's right.
And that's what you want to show the judges too. You really want to show them what is it that separates you and makes you that little bit more interesting than somebody else up there.
Oh, definitely.
Just to hone in on that as well, when you're presenting, since we're on that topic, how long do you hold those poses for? You've got some people that come out, they do all the fluffy stuff, and they get up there and they and then you've got the other ones that walk out, pose, turn, pose, wave to the judges, and then off they go. What would be the most effective balance from a judge's perspective for the athlete that's on stage?
Spend more time in the position than you do getting ready for the position.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So make sure they're going to see what they've asked for.
Yeah.
And I see that a lot. Yeah, everyone does the fluffy stuff, and then you hit the position and it's gone. We didn't get to see it.
Yes, yeah, that's such a good point, actually. I haven't really thought of it like that. That's a really good piece of advice. Yeah, don't spend too much time just getting yourself ready for the position, because by the time the judges are looking, because you guys are looking down, scoring points, looking up, looking down, looking up, and you're assessing everyone that's on that stage. And there could be, 12 people on that stage.
12 really good people on that stage. It can get really competitive.
Yeah.
And suddenly, especially at the top two, three, that's going to make the difference between who's going to pull it off and who's not, because you're going to get the person who just showed you what you wanted to see, and the other one, missed it again. They were there for a moment.
Yeah. And so when they're coming out for their initial first routines before the comparison as well, where they get to highlight two of their most favorite poses, generally it's like a front and a back or a side. How many seconds would you say that they need to hold each one of those poses in that initial pre-comparison part, where they come out and they get to show the audience and the judges?
You'd want nothing less than 5 seconds of in the position, established. You're there, you've hit what you've got to hit, you are tight there, everyone can see exactly what you got to do, then you can move on. That's a lot of time.
When you're on stage, it is when you're sitting there going, one Mississippi, two Mississippi.
Yeah. That'll help you slow down a bit anyway.
Yeah, definitely. I was just thinking that.
Good point.
I had one competitor came out once, and this is a person who should have been in top 3. Came straight out, just almost scuttled on stage, hit the shots, moved back, and ended up in maybe 5th place. Now, the interesting was the person asked me about a feedback, and I said, you were top 3, but no one saw it. Now, next time you come out, make sure that you take your time in every single thing. 2 weeks later, the person won the top spot in another show. Did exactly that. That was a person who was top 3, top easy, could have been even won that show, but had just disappeared because no one even saw them. They just saw this person scuttle out, hit some quick shots, and now I'll disappear back into the lineup and hopefully smile.
Yes.
Slow down, show everyone what you got. You should have been, you were top 3. And then you're top 1 2 weeks later. Yeah, that's all talk.
And you've been judging since 1989, like we were still in our school.
Wow.
Yeah.
Barely out of primary school. But, one of the things that I would really like to get your insight on is how mobility, evolution in your regime has evolved from 1989 until 2023, where we are right now, because that's a long time to judge, to be at the head of your game. And you've been exposed to some incredible world-class athletes.
A lot of it is defined by how each individual actually physically is made up. There are people whose hips are so deep that they can't even hit a full squat to parallel, for example. Their posing may be a little bit limited by some structural limitations as well. It can be there. It's not always there, but sometimes you find somebody who's got a real problem. A good assessment by a professional is probably going to let you know if you had more capacity or actually you're at your limit there, and we've got to work with a few other things. And we do find that that can be there. Like if we look back in, if you even look at the old Pumping Iron movie, it opens up with Eugene Sandow, I think, doing a backflip and things like that. Posing displays have been around since the turn of the 20th century.
Yeah.
And certainly we look at, everyone loved Ed Corney back in the 70s, how he moved.
Yeah.
There was an emphasis on really nice movement and displaying the mobility that some people had, and other people didn't quite have that, and they probably chose music which was more appropriate to a less mobile individual. There's aspects of your personality and who you are that probably should be emphasized. There's a lot of competitors choose music that I don't really think goes with their physique. Who are they? What are they presenting? What do they really look like? And is that music really appropriate? I think Sean Ray in the men's destroyed so many people by him using the music that he did, and then everyone else wanted to be Sean Ray. Dude, it was only him.
Yeah.
You're getting these massive physiques coming out and all posing to soft music and just going, that isn't you. You've all tried to do it and it's stuck around for decades.
Yeah.
And other people choose music that's a little bit more heroic than they are. There's some elements to it in the in choosing something that really does display the style of physique that you have.
Oh, that's so powerful. So can you give us an example, like a specific example of how you should select, the right music for and movement for your body?
Yes, I'd say pick your top 6 poses. Look at your top 6 poses, what they are. Now, what sort of music should be behind a clip of that shot?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And you start looking at it and you start going, does that really show what I'm wanting to show? Does that music give the power to that statue that I've just put up there? And that would probably work best for you, is pick your best 5 or 6 really perfect shots that you have encapsulated that is you, and then find a clip of music that's something that leads to that, and you look at it and go, is that leading to this shot being impactful? Or is it just going to get lost because I really like that piece of music and I'm just going to put that pose in somewhere and it's just going to sit in there but no one's going to realize that was a crescendo moment.
Right. So it's got to flow. It's like a body. It has to flow.
Yeah. Pick the things that you want to be impactful with and make sure the music actually appropriately goes to the impact you want with that. Now, you might be a fairly, shall we say, less thunderous individual who has beautiful lines. Well, the music's got to associate with that very well as well, but don't get lost. Make sure you're emphasizing those shots that you're going to give the audience time to appreciate as well. Go back and watch Bob Paris in that same Olympia shit. Well, it's the one that Haney won, so I got his first one, whatever year that was. And Bob Paris came out and did a magnificent posing piece. And that's one you can absorb and go, okay, so you can really get the lesson upon how he presented each of the poses he wanted the audience to react to.
Do you think that's it was better in the past, how that selection was made, or better in the future now? Because we've got such a huge array of athletes and genres of music these days, and even some of the poses have become quite creative by nature as well. So if you're looking at that, do you think we have evolved? We have gone backwards? We've kind of stabilized? Like, what trajectory would you say?
It's a bit of a pendulum that swings a fair bit.
Yeah.
There are so many wonderful choices that you can have to go on stage with now, aren't there? You can choose something from the past. You can choose contemporary. You can choose anything you like. You've got so much more to choose from now. Everyone criticised Nick Walker for some of his posing in the past because he knew it didn't count, so he just came out and hit a couple of shots. he could get away with it until he hit the Olympia. And then, of course, he put something much better together there. Kai Green, of course, will give us all a lesson on how to move and how to make impact.
Crab crawl, like that thing that he used to do. That was his famous signature.
Yeah. You don't have to be Kai, but you can certainly learn from him.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, many of the athletes who really spend time. I mean, Josh won a posing prize with a really good piece as well.
I was thinking of his routine actually when you were talking about the impact zones, I guess you would say, you know, the music building, and then boom, you know, there's the pose right at the right point. He had that. That's why he won, you know, with that routine, because you watched it and it was like watching a piece of art moving on a stage, and, you know, hitting the poses at the perfect time. And, you know, it was just beautiful to watch.
So sometimes it's not about choosing your favorite song. I don't think I've ever heard Josh play that in the gym when he's training.
Yeah.
It's really is separating what the performance art is going to be from your training art.
So let the music be selected by your strengths in terms of your poses first, as opposed to, oh, I really like this song, so therefore you see that sometimes you've got that, you know, that real grunge, like the person almost like they start off stage and they, you know, beeline for the front, they run to the front, and then they, you know, they hit the most muscular straight away, and, you know, that's 30 seconds out of 60 seconds that they've got already gone. So that's really, that's such an incredible point to make, and I think it's going to be really significant for so many people on this podcast listening to this now, across the board, male, female, novice, even at an Olympian level.
Yeah, there's so many great just people who have displayed their physiques over the years, males and females, that there's a lot of people you can go to and have a look at what they've done to create the impact they did. And because you want to be a successful competitor, that is time to go look at those people.
Oh, that's such a good point. You know, you sort of, a lot of, I think, you know, some of the people coming up now, they don't really know the history of the sport, and just how far back, when you were talking about, you know, the Sandows and of the world, you know, and how posing really goes back to, I mean, there's old black and white photos, and that's not just of men, there were women like Pudgy, you know,
Pudgy Stockton, yes.
Yeah, Pudgy Stockton. I mean, she was just art, you know, and way before her time.
Yeah, very much. And that's like Corey Everson's demonstrations when she came out, that set a whole new standard for us all.
Oh, and even her photo shoots, just beautiful, you know, and it was always, she I guess was one of the women that I looked at first to look at how she moved and how she posed, and perfecting all of the different poses that she would do in her photo shoots, and just an incredible woman.
That's the one thing I noticed. About her, this air that she held, and, you know, it was still very feminine. It was very classy. It was just, you know, you have that element of it being sexy, but not like, you know, so, you know, what we're seeing a lot today of, and I think, you know, that history has been lost of how it all started and where it actually came from. And it's almost like, you know, some of my favorite bodybuilders and figure athletes were, you know, from the kind of late 80s, early 90s, like that period right there. And they just had this incredible air about themselves, and grace, I think, would be that word to use.
So much. And then you have somebody like Bev Francis, who came from purely a powerlifting world and was basically brought into the bodybuilding world to create some consternation and some challenges to our concept of what female bodybuilding was.
Oh, yes.
Bev, for me, is one of the most wonderful human beings anyone can ever learn from, because she was the first female to bench press 300 pounds, right? So I can remember I chased Bev for quite a few years because I wanted to know how she ever broke that record. And it was really interesting. I said, Bev, you breaking that 300-pound bench press barrier was like Roger Bannister, the first man to run the 4-minute mile.
Yes.
And she said, we both had the same coach.
Unbelievable. Wow.
Goosebumps just thinking about that.
And there it is. It's okay, Bev. So how did you do it then? And she said, interestingly, with her training approach, said, I bench pressed, squatted, and deadlifted 7 days a week. Each of those lifts was practiced every day. So although we think about routines and we think about, hey, it's bench day Monday, it might be squat day Tuesday, it might be deadlift, say, Wednesday in the powerlifting world, she would still practice each of the techniques every single day, 7 days a week. And that's a commitment to excellence, is taking a track and field athlete's mentality to the strength and figure sports. You just practice. Interestingly, she started her first sport as a ballerina, as taking up ballet dancing.
Wow.
And that teaches you pain
Mm.
and pain tolerance. So I think dance is a really great place for a lot of females to enter in the early part of their development, because you do learn commitment, you learn to be structured, and you learn to put up with discomfort.
But isn't it true? Like, I remember seeing, I don't know if it was in the bodybuilding movie, like you saw all like your Zanes, your Arnies and everyone, there was like footage of them doing ballet.
Ballet. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Footage of them doing ballet was, I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, it was Arnie. Arnie had a ballet teacher, and he used to get on the, what's it called? The bar? The bar? Yeah.
Oh, it is.
B-A-R-R-E. The bar.
So funny seeing this huge man, but he was talking about it, teaching him, I guess those very things. It was painful. He said it was painful.
Very much.
It's creating a structure. It's creating a pose and isometrically being able to contract that and hold it under tension. So I didn't know that about Bev Francis. You know what I do know? Well, actually, I hope I know this right, but she's from Geelong, isn't she?
She is from Geelong. She spends
That is where I am from.
No way.
That's where all the great people are from, apparently.
Yeah.
How good is that, huh?
Yeah. I was like, you know what? Great things do come out of Geelong.
There are some good things out of Geelong, aren't there, huh?
Absolutely. The other thing that you just touched on, and I thought I would really love to get your insight onto this. Lisa and I have been talking about how our training has changed over the last, probably more 3 years, and how we're now incorporating. We do the 3 big lifts, where we've gone through strength phases, and both of our coaches have actually kind of worked with you in some capacity or another, and have kind of been mentored by you in some way, and how much we've grown, how much muscle we've put on. I've put on probably the most muscle I've ever put on over the last 3 years. And it's from that different training technique, and incorporating the strength movements into it.
You're so right. And it's a thing that was written up back in the 1960s. I can get the old magazines on that one. And there was things called the super squat routines. And they were 20 rep squats. And you had to do breathing squats. And you were going to do them 3 times a week. And people were writing testimonials to how much muscle they were putting on from just making sure they squatted 20 rep squat sets. And I squat 3 times a week at the moment, or about every 3rd day anyway. And the change has been humongous putting that back in my routine. I mean, I'm dieting really hard at the moment. I'm basically full carnivore. I don't have a carb, right? Wow. And it's a really interesting approach, dropping body fat. Oh, but stimulation of muscle has been really intriguing by just going, I'm going to squat every 3rd day though.
Yeah, and that's the principle that we use. Like on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday split, and it's each one of those days, it's like I'll squat, I'll deadlift, and I'll bench, and maybe there might be some slight variations of that to create the stimulus, and especially when you're hitting that top point. But in 3 years, I ended up putting on 9 kilos of muscle. Over lockdown in a gym that I put together, makeshift gym in my garage. And that was the body, and that was the training that won me my pro card last April.
Isn't that astounding? Yes, you really embraced the basics that caused your body to adapt.
And that was it.
Now, realistically, there are a couple of scientific studies that do have some sort of discussions on that. I remember one saying that people who squatted before they did arm training ended up getting bigger arms. than those who didn't.
Yeah,
I
definitely feel like
there's so much tension. It's
Mm.
and some of those squats go for, like, some of my squats would be like 100 kilos for 20 reps.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like 60 kilos. And I'm telling you what, it's a 4-minute set. And I am absolutely fuckatanied after that. Like, every body in my body that next day, I'm like, holy Mary, Mother and Joseph, what has just happened?
Isn't that amazing? I mean, that's a long set, isn't it?
Huge. And it's same with the leg press, you know, the 45-degree leg press, it'd be like, you know, 5-minute sets.
Yeah.
I know. I remember looking at my program. Remember looking at my programs and seeing like 15 and 20, and I was like, "What? I'm a bodybuilder. I'm used to like 8." And but yeah, the growth speaks for itself, and how well my body feels actually, because you know my coach had to take me right back to basics because I had been using incorrect form for such a long time. I had so many imbalances in my body. So we had to go right back to basics and back to the squat, tear it all down, make sure I had to learn how to brace. I had never braced properly. I used to suck my tummy in. You know, like a lot of girls, I think when they're first starting out, they don't want to look fat in the gym and they don't want their tummy to stick out. And now it's like, oh, it's out there. I brace. I make sure I'm pushing against my belt, and I had to earn the belt too. I wasn't allowed to use the belt straight away until I actually got my form correct. And then, you know, it was about depth, and so, you know, I am not the heaviest squatter even now, but my form now is so much better, and it's created the stimulus needed to grow.
Isn't it beautiful? You've adapted to really making the work for you. You're not just counting reps.
Yeah, and you've got to get rid of the ego, don't you? To do that, I had to sort of, you know, be comfortable with taking my weights down, and I had to just be like, I don't have room for ego right now, because if I keep going this way, my body isn't going to be moving in another 12 months. And it had gotten so bad because I had a lot of little injuries and niggles starting to happen. And now my body feels the healthiest it's felt for a long time.
And doing really big sets.
Yeah.
But sometimes, like, even you can attest to this. So I use Recomposer, and my coach is Tom Brown, and his coach is Seb, right?
Yeah.
And so I'd go in on a Monday, and it would literally be a deadlift, a bench, maybe a lat pull down or an overhead press, and then just one set, but one all out set. And then on a Wednesday, I'd, you know, do a squat, you know, still stuff from the other day, or a deadlift, and then, you know, use opposing muscles. But it'd be like 1 set, 3 sets, I'm done, in an off season in terms of bodybuilding. And it's the most amount of size I've ever put on with no injuries, maximum recovery, and more time for that mobility and that rehabilitation that I can spend in the muscle. So I'm like, so my philosophy now is, for every one session that you use to fuck yourself up in the gym, you need 1 session to actually fix yourself up. And if you're training 5 days a week and you can't recover 5 days a week, this is just my personal philosophy, then you're training too much.
There's a lot to that, isn't there? There's a lot of variables to manipulate for each individual. And the thing is, you've earned the right to be able to evaluate those things by what you've done in the past to get where you are today. You've got to go through a lot of phases to be able to earn the right to understand what you just did. I wouldn't put a beginner into the 1 set routine until they actually learned how to move really well for a year.
That was a 3-year process. Yeah.
Yes, that's it, you know. And I think the same with Will and I. Will is my coach here at Dubbo. He runs Nemesis Fitness, and you know, we're always evaluating where I'm at in terms of my fatigue levels. So things are always being tweaked in terms of, okay, well, how are you recovering? You know, how does your body feel? This is what we talk about every week before we set next week's agenda.
That's wonderful. And it really does allow you to make the most out of every session, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. And one day I hope to get down and have a session with yourself, actually.
I'm sure it'll happen somewhere.
Touche
But
to that. And
Yeah.
and on that note as well, like people listening to today, whether or not they're an athlete, whether they're a coach listening in on behalf of their own clients, looking to upskill and educate themselves, like how can people, irregardless of where they're located, basically be, connected with you? Do you have workshops? Do you have things that people can be a part of, that's obviously going to be able to actually put the practicality into everything that we've talked about today?
very much the touchstone for everything for me is Instagrams, where people can find what I'll announce that's going to happen. For example, I'm off to Hong Kong and Bangkok in March to teach some workshops and presentations. And then in the end of May up until maybe September, October, I'll be in the US for the whole time doing workshops in different states and teaching different groups. So going from all around the whole states, LA over to Miami, through Texas, up to Portland. But all those things will be announced about what the different workshops are that we're going to be doing. And back here, I got some great work with Danny Antonellis, where we do our glute work. We've just shot 115 exercises recently just on glutes.
She's
We're doing the
amazing.
voice.
Gosh, she is just incredible, Denny. I'll have to try and get her on one day too.
Oh, she's awesome. Yeah. Well, she's had a really good experience and a good journey to get where she is. So yes, we have that, and I'll be putting up on a few platforms some very deep rehab-based works. Like there's a 12-part lumbar spine course that'll be coming up. So how to rehab that and how to understand it. Shoulder courses, but they'll all be coming up, but they're always announced through Instagram anyway.
And so how can people find you on Instagram as well?
Just Andrew_Lock_strength. That's me.
You.
You can find other things there, but that's the best way where I'm contactable anyway.
Oh, I think that's absolutely amazing. You're definitely one of the, greatest, and I won't say in Australia, I'll say one of the greatest in the world.
In the world, yeah, you've been world class and world leading in a lot of areas.
No, that would go to thanks to a couple of great moments in my life, which the day I graduated from physio school, I went into a practice, and it was a shoulder specialist practice, and it was well known for their leadership in shoulder research. And the leading practitioner there, she was very intimidating. And the first day I arrived in the practice, she took me in the office and said to me, "Your job here is to become the best in the world at something." And she said, "And I'm the best in the world at shoulders, so you better choose something else." There was no apologies there. That was pure intimidation, but she earned it. She's damn good on her analysis and work. So that's where I started my shoulder work, having to be going into surgeries with surgeons, and they'll be firing questions off to you about the anatomy of various things while they're doing their work, and you're staying there observing. And of course, lower back problems are the most poorly taught thing at any university, and it's still totally useless at nearly every university. And I run now a thing called the College of Functional Movement Clinicians, and that's with a neurosurgeon called David Johnson. And basically, we're putting together a lot of programs to help educate professionals to become proficient clinicians in movement analysis.
How incredible, because how many people have had unnecessary surgeries?
Oh, too many.
It's sad, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so sad.
So,
wow.
And I believe we can all be frontline, us people in the health and fitness industry, with more education.
100%. Yeah.
And
not being so ignorant to it as well, respectfully speaking, and understanding the actual significance of it, and going, well, it has to be this holistic approach, and go out there, upskill yourself, educate yourself, choose the best of the best in each regime of health, and that's how you're going to become so well-rounded.
And when you look at your social media influencer, do check that they actually have results themselves. Do check the athletes that they actually deal with. There's a lot of people with a lot of followers who do not treat anybody, and themselves have no ability and have demonstrated no understanding, but they will say things because the algorithm benefits them saying things. always look at someone like Sebastian Oreb with Australian Strength Coach. You want to learn about training technique? You're going to see a guy who trained the world's strongest man, trained some of the best female athletes in the world. Great. People like Squat University, have a look. He trains all the strong males and females in the world. Look at your sources, who they actually do have success with, and don't follow anybody who doesn't actually have success with athletes, no matter how loud they say it.
So true. That's such great advice. Oh,
yeah.
It's a world out there, isn't it? It's you can just see it and you go, they don't actually treat anybody.
yes.
And they're saying the opposite to the people who do have success. Follow the people who have success.
Exactly. Yeah. And you're so right. You know, this is what we were talking about just a moment ago about the evolution of fitness and how all the rest of it and how it's evolving. And these days it becomes a lot of what I've seen is a lot of Dr. Google and algorithms. And less of people with that formal, you know, professional training. And another point as well, just while we've got you here, is if you're not an expert, if you're not formally trained, and if you don't have the answer for your client, you can find the answer for them purely by seeking out the right person and then you know, and passing them over there, you know, because to help someone, you know, on their health and fitness journey, whatever that is, in any capacity, it's a team effort and it's not one person. You know, you can't be an expert at 100 things. You know, you literally be 500 years old, you know, to have that level of expertise. You know, they say it takes a good 20 years for someone to become an expert in their specific field.
It's a good call. A very good call. I get a lot of questions about nutrition. Don't ask me about nutrition. I ask somebody else. I look at people I know have success, and I know people who do work well. Good, that's who I go talk to. But they're going to advise me, but I'm not going to tell you what they said because the context will be inappropriate. I'll tell you what I do. I'll see those people.
Yeah, I think that's why a good athlete, you'll see their thank you list, and it's about this long. You know, because they've had a team around them and they've gone to the experts in each of those fields, and they've taken their advice and they've learned something from it, and then they've become a greater athlete because of it.
And
so much.
And the people that are also supporting them as well. You look at the lineage, right, of who's supporting them. Like I look at Tom, I'm like, okay, there's Seb, there's you, there's, you know, Damon Hayhow. I'm like, okay, these are very, you know, influential, knowledgeable, smart experts in the field. There's not a degeneration happening here of like Dr. Google and then taking some, you know, tips of that and then, you know, writing it up in an email as part of someone's protocol.
Absolutely is. Yes, you look at the lineage, you look at the success that they've had. So important, isn't it? In so many different aspects for us, what we do. I always say, as we say, we only see further because we stand on the shoulders of the giants.
I love that.
That's such a what a great. You've had some pearlers today. You've got some really. I love your little, and you do it on your videos as well. You've kind of got these little succinct takeaway messages, and they just really resonate.
I've got a few of them. I've written them down here. I might use them in your bio.
Actually, another one I had recently was which just came up for me was social media is the Garden of Eden for the participation award winner.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah.
It rewards anybody.
Yeah.
It really does. It really does. And I think that's why I'm so excited about having the podcast with Lisa and us doing this, because we get to showcase all of the expertise. Like we have people like you. It's like we need everyone to know about you so that they can actually upskill and learn more, go to the workshops and, you know, increase your learning.
We love them. We love what we do, don't we?
Yeah. And, you know, just having yourself on here, like I've learned stuff today as well. And so it's almost like a form of, you know, upskilling as well for ourselves. We're not getting skilled, but, you know, informative and resources and where to go and who to speak to. And it's just incredible. It's a personal development, professional development is lifelong. It doesn't, you know, the moment you stop, you die.
You're gone. Absolutely. Some people never live, do they?
No.
So true. That's so true.
And what do
You've
you?
got some workshops coming up, actually, don't you? Are they all sold out, or?
I'm trying to think. Let's see. I'll be announcing some new dates. We'll do a couple for Melbourne, a shoulder workshop and a lumbar spine workshop. I'll put some dates up for that. But the Sydney sold out for the lumbar spine. I've probably got to just set some new ones now because the other ones have sold out. So I'll just figure something for April when I get back from over in Asia.
Yes.
And fit something in before I head off for the US. Lots of fun. And so what are you both training today? Anything on your training plans?
Today, Monday. Oh, I had to think then. I'm like, what's Monday?
It's Monday.
So today I've already trained this morning, actually. So I've already done my session for today.
Awesome.
And I trained shoulders this morning.
All right.
So,
I haven't trained. I had a kid getting ready for school this morning, first day of term, and everyone already knows now, but I'm relocating to the Sunshine Coast at the end of this week. So I've spent the last 3 weeks packing up my life in Geelong. And, and there's probably a little bit more packing to do. Getting it loaded and moving life to the sunny coast. So for me, it's going to be like one of those 120 rep squat sets. And that'll be me done for today.
That'll be astounding. Well, you can catch up with my daughter up there on the Sunshine Coast. That's where she trains her jiu-jitsu.
Oh, really? Where is she
going? Fantastic.
She's at Legacy Sunshine Coast. That's her jiu-jitsu school. She just got her brown belt last week.
Legacy Sunshine Coast, is it?
Yep, that's where she is. And she's off to the World Championships. That's why we're heading off in May to the US, because that's where she'll compete.
Wow. What's her name?
That's Lorna. Lorna Liberty. Lorna Liberty Lock. Triple L.
Oh, that's such a cool name.
Love it. That's amazing. Yeah, I'll definitely hit her up when I'm up there for some jiu-jitsu. That'd be great. I think
she actually did one bikini comp in her life. There we go.
Yep.
Oh wow. So we should let you go because we literally could talk to you all day and pick your brains about different things, and we'd love to have you back on down the track.
Oh, sure. We'll do a part 2 somewhere, won't we, huh?
We will.
Love to. But what would be, I guess, three takeaway tips or 3 things you would like to kind of leave with the listeners in terms of, things you'd like them to consider or things that you'd like to pass on?
Well, number 1 would definitely be determine your passion. I would say there's no way in the world I would consider that I actually work for a living. I only do what I want to do. Yeah. And I've never felt that I've actually ever worked. It doesn't matter whether it's whether I'm studying or whether I'm writing or whether I'm with patients. It's not work for me. It's just you're following what defines you as a human being. And I think if you're really looking at where you are in life, are you doing the thing that you want to be? Is that really you? And if it's not, try to find a way to get there, because that's what's going to be really, really important. Part 2 is the thing that has the most benefit for you is probably the thing you hate doing the most.
Yeah.
So should it come to mobility, that's probably the thing that you're not doing. Should it be addressing the weaknesses, that's probably the thing you're not doing because you love and embrace your strengths. Okay, to get your long game in, you're going to have to do the thing that you probably like the least, like 20 rep squats. They're 2 of the most important things to do. And number 3 is take the stress off yourself that you think balance means encompassing everything in your life. Success means balance in the endeavor that you're trying to become successful at. And make other people around you aware, should they have to be part of your life, that that's going to be part of the process that you're dealing with. And it's a conversation that sometimes can be quite useful because you shouldn't leave those things unsaid. You may not be an uncaring individual, but you may need to be uncaring for a little while. And to bring that to a conversation that's going to understand that it's going to be part of your life at a certain point, especially competing. Get ready.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. That is just words of those are just very wise words. Thank you so much for coming on today, giving us so much of your time. I know you're a busy man and you've just been so generous with your time and never hesitated. Inboxed you and straight away you replied, and you were more than happy to help our industry out.
I love
Always a total pleasure. You got me both inspired today, so I'm looking forward to training now.
Oh, that's amazing.
What are you training?
Well, it is today. Will be arms.
Arms.
Yeah, so it's my favorite day. But then again, squats turning into my favorite day, so that'll be tomorrow.
Become a love-hate relationship, but no doubt we're going to have you on again. It's been such a great pleasure. We'll get you we'll obviously finish this podcast now, but we'll get you off air as well, just to formally thank you. And everyone out there, this podcast will be coming out this Friday, so stay tuned. It's going to be an absolute pearler. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and thank you Andrew for having us.
Oh, thank you, Lisa and Rose.
Thank you.